This is the portrait of a revolutionary. Fidel Castro will be 70 this August. Here he is adored, cherished, like a grandfather, a walking national monument to himself. But he is also despised. Thousands flee Cuba any way they can, anything to escape the tyranny of its master.
This is not a revolution, this is nothing, this is a garbage.
I love the man. I would die for the man today.
Who is he really? CBS Reports took its cameras and went to find out. We were given unprecedented access to Cuba and to Castro, from the streets of Havana to the peaks of the Sierra Maestra Mountains, where he became a nation's rebel prince. Take me back in time to that moment. What was in your mind and heart?
He was in the upper level of courage.
We walked in the dark at night to meet Castro.
The people went crazy when they saw him.
But there are those in the United States who believe him to be evil, and the U.S. government attacked him here at the Bay of Pigs.
The mission to CIA was, you take him out.
36 years is enough! 36 years is enough!
A cry many still make today.
No more torture!
Castro has to go, and has to go quick.
He is the one man who has created today's Cuba. He has brought them bread and bitterness, opportunity and oppression.
And I was amazed, and I said, who is Fidel Castro?
CBS Reports presents The Last Revolutionary with CBS News correspondent Dan Rather.
This is where the man became a myth. The stunning, secretive maze of the Sierra Maestra Mountains, the cradle of the Cuban Revolution. Fidel Castro emerged from here talking and shooting his way to center stage almost 40 years ago. The U.S. government has spent billions trying to get rid of him. He infuriates, he fascinates, and as politicians go, he has lived in the spotlight longer than anyone around. Yet, for most of us in America, he's still pretty much a caricature. A beard, the now gone cigar, a green uniform. Tonight, CBS Reports takes you into the heart of the myth and the life of the man. Many outside of Cuba call him a dictator and worse, but here he is Comandante, Compañero, or most often simply Fidel. At La Plata, 3,200 feet up in the Sierra Maestra, 400 miles east of Havana, Fidel Castro and I met to recall the days he spent here.
We are in one of the main places here of our struggle.
We walked the paths he'd walked before. This is the Cuban Revolution's holy land. From these mountains, Castro's guerrilla army took a dream and gave it life, made it known in every village, made it real in every home across Cuba.
At the beginning, our headquarters moved with us.
Why did you come here?
Because I had thought about the possibility of guerrilla warfare on a field like this. We knew all the roads, we explored the grounds. In the night, practically with my eyes covered, I could follow my way around here.
What were you trying to accomplish?
To set up a system of social justice, a system that would give people dignity.
President Fulgencio Batista takes first.
It was 1956, and Fidel Castro's enemy was this man, Cuban dictator Fulgencio Batista, a corrupt politician, supported by the American government and partner to the American mafia.
He was actually their partner in the gambling business.
Top mob lawyer Frank Regano recalls a Cuba that was a mafia paradise for gangsters like Meyer Lansky and Santo Traficante.
Without any question, there wasn't a better place in the world for a mobster to operate a business than in Havana, Cuba. There was a great time there. Anything you wanted was there, it was available.
But not to most of the Cuban people.
Havana burned as workers rioted, taking the rebel message to Batista's backyard. Castro's legacy was being carved out for generations to come, a leader willing to put his life on the line.
Throughout that process, something very important happened. That was that people began believing in somebody, believing in some movement, in something.
The Sierra Maestra.
Reporting for CBS News, Robert Tabor and cameraman Wendell Hoffman found Castro when Batista's soldiers couldn't. They showed the world the rebel army was growing.
It is not the same to fight for liberty as to fight against it.
Tabor found some other people he'd been looking for. 3 American teenagers whose fathers were stationed on the U.S. Navy base in nearby Guantanamo. Mike Garvey, Chuck Ryan, and Victor Buellman had run away from home to fight for Fidel.
All fresh-faced and filled with revolutionary passion, Garvey, Ryan, and Buellman helped shape world opinion. After all, they lived with, marched, and fought alongside the rebels. Eventually, the 3 boys left Cuba, taking with them their intimate knowledge of Fidel Castro and keeping it secret until tonight.
Put your bag down and come on up.
Hey, big guy.
Yeah, you got shorter. I'll take a hug if you do.
When's the last time you shaved anyway, huh?
This Florida reunion is the first time Mike Garvey, Chuck Ryan, and Victor Buellman had all been together since they left Fidel Castro's Sierra Maestra headquarters 37 years ago.
When I first met Fidel, it surprised me. What surprised me was the force, the amount of people that were involved. There wasn't any, basically.
14 people.
I mean, that was the army.
We persisted. We persevered because we were deeply convinced that we were right.
I don't think he had a doubt in the world that he was going to be successful. You know, it was just a matter of when.
Absolutely.
So.
At Castro's side was his younger brother Raul and the equally dedicated Argentinian doctor Che Guevara.
Is it fair or unfair to say when this picture was taken that you were a theoretical communist, Marxist-Leninist, but not a party member? Is that accurate?
Yes, I was not a member of any party, and Che Guevara was not either. We were members only of our own movement.
I don't think he had any idea of communism at that time.
I don't think he was a communist.
No,
I never thought
either.
he was a communist.
No.
People were tired, fed up of corruption, racial discrimination, sex discrimination.
He was going to make Cuba better.
That was the attitude. And he had that attitude. You could feel the attitude.
Castro transformed himself from a young rebel to a seasoned commandante with a battle plan.
Fidel was definitely a combat officer. He knew what his program was and how to do it. Fidel knew what was 20 miles in a circumference around us. He knew it all.
Mr. President, when Bob Tabor was here,
Señor Presidente, cuando Bob Tabor estuvo aquí,
you spoke a little English with him. Well, how about trying a little now?
1957 was a bad time, very rain. And one competition between Yankees. We were 3 days with the radio.
Listening to the Yankee games?
We have rain, we had not airplane. 3-day vacation, 3-day vacation.
3-day vacation. What a scene. You're up here, the war is on, but it's raining so hard. You were hearing the Yankee game?
Yes, the Yankee game.
If Fidel Castro was the godfather, this woman, Celia Sanchez, was the godmother of the Cuban Revolution. Closer to Castro than Che Guevara, closer from the very beginning than anyone.
Celia Sanchez.
Tell me about this woman, Celia Sanchez.
Cuénteme de Celia Sanchez.
Bueno, Celia fue la que más nos ayudó.
Celia was a very courageous woman, very firm, and most talented.
We were called compañeros, and she was a compañero. Celia was a soldier.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is my favorite picture. Celia Sanchez is putting a Band-Aid or some kind of bandage on your finger. Do you remember this?
I like this picture much. I was not familiar with it.
Were you romantically involved? Were you lovers with Celia Sanchez?
¿Y usted no piensa que yo me puedo reservar algunas cosas?
And do you think I should keep some things to myself?
Yes, I do think you should keep some things to yourself.
Sí,
And I
seguro que lo
respect the
creo.
answer very much.
Y respeto mucho esa pregunta.
It's cloudy over the mountains. It's beautiful in that direction. In my many conversations with Fidel Castro over the last 20 years, I've never seen him so personally reflective as in these mountains on this day. And I wondered, was this a genuine look back or a phony act contrived by a master?
We used to live there a long time, and we went through a lot there.
Were they your best days?
Sí, digamos que sí.
Let's say yes, they were.
Been downhill since then, no?
Sí.
Yes, sort of.
Era más feliz aquí.
I was happier here, you know?
Estaba todo por delante.
Everything was still ahead of us.
When we come back, Castro takes power, and the few people who really know tell us how he got there.
Now Batista has fled. A new leader is on the scene, Fidel Castro.
The first week of January 1959, Cuba would be changed forever. A liberator had come, and those who had fought for Castro would never forget it.
It was fantastic to see our people triumphant. All those guys we knew on the trucks, everybody.
You come into Havana a conquering hero, like a Caesar.
It was a happy day for everybody. But it was the culmination of something that we had been working for years.
Fidel Alejandro Castro Ruiz's life, like the life of the revolution itself, began in the countryside on his middle-class parents' sugar plantation. CBS reports found these photos of the young Fidel. We talked with the handful of people who were there as Castro grew to power, beginning with his big brother Ramon.
He used to like all the sports, basket, football, baseball, hunting. He loved exploring the mountains. He was always going up the mountains.
A brother who still works at his side as a top administrator of Cuba's agriculture. But there is also a sister whom he banished from Cuba when she dared to question his total power.
He is not the same Fidel. He's another person. The power that he wants, doesn't matter the price that he's paying or he's going to pay for this, the power will kill him.
Quite often we came down these stairs on protests, students' protests.
Buenos días.
Castro took me to the milestones of his life.
You remember the first time you walked through here?
¿Recuerda la primera vez que entró por aquí?
Sí.
Yes, I do.
¿Qué hacen en la Plaza Cadena ahora?
Havana University was his political crucible. Here, he first found an audience. Today, he commands one. His old college classmates recall a tireless, bold, sometimes brutal Fidel.
An intrepid man. He was almost in the upper level of courage.
Luis Aguilar Leon was a classmate too. Once he was even a friend, but like Castro's sister, he would be banished from Cuba. Now he's a newspaper editor in Miami.
And in some of the discussion we have, he would be reasonable until you say, no, you're wrong, Fidel. Maybe you didn't read this or any argument, and then he become usually very angry. You don't know what you are saying. The dialogue stopped there. You cannot tell Fidel, you're wrong twice.
I've heard that this is where you were introduced to political violence as an option. Is that
He
true?
oído decir que fue aquí donde se le presentó a usted la opción de la violencia política. It was here where I had to put up my first resistance.
Frente a la violencia.
He had a pistol, a .45, and he put it on the table. I remember that.
And we went into the streets. And there were so many clashes with the police that got beaten once.
But he would not be stopped. His rebel roots ran deep. This is a government mugshot, Fidel Castro, just an everyday street thug to Batista.
What's the charge?
Cosas sin importancia.
Well, negligible things.
Atacar el regimiento del
Having
cuartel de
attacked the
Moncada,
main regiment of the Moncada garrison,
derrocar a Batista y iniciar
to
una
overthrow
revolución.
Batista and to start a revolution.
Fueron cargos.
As you see, very light charges.
It was July 26, 1953. Castro led fewer than 200 men in a brash assault against the Moncada, one of Batista's main military bases. Cuba was caught off guard by the fiery new rebel. This speaker, lawyer, dreamer with a gun. 6 days later, he was Batista's prisoner.
Teníamos que habernos matado.
We should have killed ourselves before becoming prisoners, but we did not have the chance. And afterwards, while we were in prison, we denounced all the crimes. Everybody was demanding amnesty for us.
Batista granted that amnesty under public pressure, a political gamble he would live to regret.
Do you recognize this man?
Creo que soy yo y creo que es en Nueva York.
I think it's me and I think it's in New York.
Castro put on a suit and headed to America to buy new weapons, build support, bring his dream back to Cuba.
All those ideas about Cuba, how to make a revolution without a gun, because we did not have a gun then and we did not have a penny.
You were building the revolution $1 at a time.
Sí.
Juan Cabañas remembers the midnight knock on his parents' front door.
He always said, if I leave, I'll get there. And if I get there, I'll enter the country. If I enter the country, I will gain victory. It was December 1956 that he invaded Cuba with 82 people, 82 men in a boat.
So this is your ship of dreams.
Sí.
The motor yacht Grandma is sealed under glass in downtown Havana, a shrine to Fidel Castro's audacity and self-confidence. Setting out from Mexico, 82 seasick compañeros returned to Cuba.
You had weapons, 82 people, some oranges, fuel, you have to have fuel.
82 personas combustible tenían.
Combustible el mínimo para
The
llegar.
minimum, the indispensable minimum amount to get to Cuba.
In an endless mangrove swamp, the rebels ran aground. After a week back in Cuba, only 21 men of the original 82 were left to fight. They clawed their way back to the same mountains where Fidel played as a boy. It took 2 years. The 21 men became a movement that fought a revolution as Castro changed history. The power was now his. It was a moment that has become Cuban legend.
His first speech, a white dove came, and then Fidel did a very unusual thing. He picked up the microphone and he began to do this. And then silence began to expand. And then, as the wind comes in a hurricane, came like, Fidel, 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 Fidel. I thought we are doomed. We are doomed. Who can tell now, Fidel, you are wrong?
Today, no one can. Comparing himself to a holy man, he is clear about how he wants the world to remember Fidel Castro.
Que era socialista.
That he was a
Quería una
socialist.
sociedad más justa, más igualitaria.
That Castro wanted a more
Más honorable.
egalitarian society, a society as many other men has dreamed of in the past.
Cristo entre ellos.
Jesus among them.
Y fíjese lo que le hicieron.
Jesus Christ, and look what he went through.
Lo acusaron.
He was accused, he was
Lo
wrongly
calumniaron.
accused, he was vexated, he was slandered,
Además, lo crucificaron.
and he was crucified.
You have been at the apex of power longer than anybody on the world stage, with the exception of King Hussein. What's the best thing about it?
Primero, tener un sentido de la independencia
First, to have a sense of independence
y de la libertad.
and of freedom,
Y sentirnos dueños de nuestro.
and to feel that we are the owners of our country.
And what's the worst thing about it?
no haber cumplido todos los sueños.
Not having been able to accomplish all my dreams.
Porque uno sueña mucho.
Because one has many dreams.
When we come back, the dream becomes a nightmare for thousands of Cubans, and America invades here at the Bay of Pigs.
Let's take a walk on the beach.
This is the Bay of Pigs, where America tried to overthrow the Cuban Revolution and do away with Fidel Castro. We walked the battlefield where few Americans ever get to go.
President, why do you think the United States did this?
Bueno, primero quería liquidar la revolución.
First, because it wanted to do away with the revolution.
As the world watched, Castro shut down casinos and threatened to nationalize American businesses. Disillusioned and bitter, thousands of Cubans, particularly the wealthy, abandoned the revolution. Some had no choice. Castro's own sister, Juanita, opposed him and soon left Cuba for Miami.
I said, I am not any soldier of your revolution. I am not the kind of people that you can order and give order and say, do this and do that. No, I am a person who I'm trying, helping the revolution, but this is not a revolution, this is nothing, this is a garbage.
The cruel side of the revolution and Castro's total authority became issues. This public execution horrified many Cubans, including Eloy Gutierrez Menoyo, a top rebel commander from the Sierra Maestra. Today, he's a free man in Miami, but like Juanita, he spoke out and tried to fight back against Castro, and for that, he spent 22 years in a Cuban prison. He says Fidel promised a revolution as Cuban as the palms, with liberty and bread, but it was not to be. Meanwhile, in 1959, Castro came to Washington and was met by then Vice President Richard Nixon. But behind the scenes, another agenda was soon set. This top-secret White House proposal was prepared and passed on to the CIA. The stated objective, quote, to bring about the replacement of the Castro regime.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
But it was President Kennedy who turned policy into war against Castro. Advising him was Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara.
We considered him an enemy of the U.S. at the time.
It was April 17, 1961. Brigade 2506, a group of 1,500 CIA-trained exiles, invaded Castro's Cuba along this beach.
I was the first one on the beach. The policy from the top was, this man has to go. And the mission to CIA was, you take him out.
This museum is Cuba's national symbol of America's will to destroy Castro and his will to resist.
Me despiertan y me dicen que están desembarcando.
They woke me up to tell me that there were landings.
A esa misma hora,
at that same moment,
antes del amanecer,
before dawn,
estaban todos los aviones en el aire.
All of our planes were already in the air.
Did you or did you not think to yourself, well, this could be the end of me?
No.
No.
No, no tuve la menor duda.
You know, I never had any doubt
que cualquiera que fuera,
that we would win.
It was another crystallizing moment. Fidel, the new president, was still a rebel, risking his life in the enemy crossfire.
Y a mí me gustaba disparar con el
You know, I enjoyed shooting with a tank because it's like the telescopic fight. You can really aim at the target.
Then requests came in for application of U.S. air power and sea power. And President Kennedy absolutely refused.
They wanted him out, but the hand of the United States was not supposed to be exposed. No one in the world were supposed to think that we were behind it. We used to laugh about that.
Without air cover and U.S. military backup, the Brigade of Exiles was trapped, and within 5 days, most of Brigade 2506 were Fidel Castro's prisoners.
Why did you come to Cuba?
Well, I came to Cuba because they told me that everybody here was against Castro.
The CIA had, in effect, predicted that the Cuban people would be so pleased at the opportunity to overthrow Castro that they would rise up in support of the invasion force. It became very clear that was a misjudgment.
The American failure here at the Bay of Pigs was a foreign policy disaster. To many people around the world, it made Fidel Castro a hero. He was now David, having beaten back Goliath. And the event gave Castro a permanent place in the American political landscape. It also solidified what is still to this day a strange, enduring mutual fixation between Castro and the United States. Now, as for President Kennedy, he felt embarrassed and was furious. His response was to turn again to the CIA, and the covert agency reacted with a vengeance.
And there were no holds barred, as far as I remember, in terms of the words "get rid of."
Sam Halpern was a top officer for President Kennedy's CIA. The U.S. war against Castro went from the public humiliation of the Bay of Pigs to the secretive world of sabotage, codename Operation Mongoose.
Mongoose as a whole across the board was to get rid of Castro and the Castro regime. That was the ultimate purpose.
The Mongoose program was a multifaceted program to weaken the Cuban government, infiltrating agents, introducing explosives.
We ran raid after raid to destroy targets. We ran 2,124 operations.
The U.S. did undertake assassination attempts directed against Castro over a period of years.
Castro, his revolution threatened by an enemy just 90 miles off the Cuban coast, reached out for a friend halfway across the world.
Unquestionably, the Soviets had strategic interests, but we also had strategic interests of our own.
Castro believed then, and believes today, that the U.S. was planning to launch another full-scale invasion against Cuba.
Now, that was a misjudgment on their part, but it was a failure on our part to put ourselves in their shoes and ask ourselves, how are they going to interpret what we're doing?
Y fue precisamente
And
ese
it was
peligro
precisely that danger,
de una
the danger
invasión directa
of a direct invasion
la que
by the American
condujo
forces that led
a la crisis.
to the missile crisis.
Time seemed to stop as Soviet nuclear missiles were discovered on Cuban soil.
Those are Russian-made, Russian-manned ballistic missiles.
A terrified world sat poised at the precipice of nuclear war.
Should these offensive military preparations continue, I have directed the armed forces to prepare for any eventualities.
Do you agree or disagree with Kennedy advisor Ted Sorensen, who said during the missile crisis, for the first time, the United States and the Soviet Union looked down the barrel of nuclear war?
I would agree with that.
Mr. President, would you have eventually made an alliance with the Soviet Union anyway?
We would have made no alliances with anyone if others had not tried to destroy us. It was then that I declared the socialist character of our revolution.
Fidel Castro's Cuba would receive an estimated $40 billion in Soviet aid over the next 27 years. Caught up in the wake of the Cold War, Castro seized the moment. The dream suddenly had a world-class backer and a world-class enemy, and the dreamer from the mountains was an international player. When we come back, a report card on the revolution and a look at the American blockade. President Castro brought us to the Lenin School in Havana. The educational system is a jewel in the society his revolutions built. Here you're seeing Cuba's future doctors, lawyers, leaders.
Mr. President, why do you like this school?
I think because here come the children with the highest grades and the best. There are many of these schools all over the country.
It's a source of great pride for the president, as is Cuba's literacy rate, virtually 100%. He could have been Elvis. The affection, though now a worn Cuban ritual, seemed genuine. We took refuge in the principal's office.
Does this school have computers?
¿Tienen computadores en esta escuela?
Sí, computador en la escuela.
Are all students computer literate?
Y todos los estudiantes aprenden a
They may
trabajar.
have computers, but
Quite often we don't even have
Los libros de
books.
texto.
The textbooks.
books, jobs, everything's been scarce since the Soviets pulled the financial plug 5 years ago.
What are these students being trained to do?
En primer lugar, buenos revolucionarios.
First of all, good revolutionaries.
Sí, pero no le diga eso.
But you should not say that to Dan Rather. Come on.
It's a fact. Support for the revolution is a college requirement.
A su pueblo en el odio a otros pueblos.
Before leaving, Castro spoke to the students, ending his speech like a preacher leading his flock in prayer.
Socialismo.
Socialism or death, homeland or death, we shall overcome. Although the students seemed deeply moved by him, it's impossible to tell how many of them would actually be willing to die for Castro's socialism. From the crowded heart of Havana to here, Castro's revolution has brought education to even the most remote areas. This grammar school is in the foothills of the Sierra Maestras, right below Castro's old rebel command post.
Nada, Fidel, nada.
It says no, Fidel.
¿Qué vas a estudiar?
And what are you planning to study?
¿Qué te gusta más?
What would you like to be in the future? A nurse?
It's a system of care and coercion. Early on, you're taught to support the revolution. In return, the revolution ensures you free education, housing, a food subsidy, and medical care.
¿Cuál estado de salud?
What is the health situation of the population here? We have a good health situation here.
And that means a government committed to people, says Dr. Benjamin Spock.
I think that that Castro regime has, from the beginning, put its thought and surprising amount of money into providing sound medical care for all the Cuban people.
Dr. Spock, America's most famous pediatrician, visited various Cuban hospitals, including this one in Havana.
She's going to have a reconstructive surgery on the heart.
It seemed to me that the care was expert.
Throughout Cuba, an army of more than 55,000 doctors gives free medical care. In the cities, there's a family doctor on virtually every block, and they all make house calls. But good medical care isn't the problem.
There's nothing in the hospitals in Cuba. There's not even aspirin.
Miami businessman Jorge Moscanosa and North Carolina's Senator Jesse Helms, Castro's most powerful enemies in the United States. At this Miami banquet, anti-Castro Cubans came to hear Senator Helms blast President Castro.
Fidel Castro is a bloody, murderous dictator, a brutal, tyrannical thug.
Helms is the primary architect of the recently signed Helms-Burton bill tightening the U.S. embargo against Cuba. He calls it
the toughest legislation ever enacted to bring about the fall of the Castro dictatorship.
When Fidel Castro first seized power, he said that much of what was wrong with his country was what the United States had brought into it. Gambling, organized crime, unrestrained capitalism. Today, Castro blames much of what is wrong with his country on what the United States keeps out. Medical supplies, consumer goods, investment dollars. El bloqueo, the blockade. That is the cornerstone of America's Cuba policy. It is also political and emotional dynamite.
These people don't see the embargo as a political tool for getting rid of Castro. They see it as a moral outrage.
We don't have to ask for a license to do God's work.
Reverend Lucius Walker and his supporters are waging what they see as a moral war against the embargo by breaking it as publicly and as often as they can. Last January, they were here at the Mexican border trying to cross with computers for Cuban hospitals.
Administration after administration has imposed this blockade, which is making life in Cuba very, very severe.
Poolside at the Hotel Nacional in Havana. The man in the red shirt is an unlikely ally of Dr. Spock and Reverend Walker.
The issue of Cuba is no longer the sole domain of left-wing liberals.
John Kavalek is big business's man in Havana. His mission? To bring Yankee capitalism back to Castro's Cuba.
Companies like Archer Daniels Midland, McDonald's, General Mills, General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, you name it. There isn't a single CEO of an American company that doesn't want to return to Cuba as soon as possible.
It all looked possible until this happened last February. Castro's Air Force shot down 2 civilian planes belonging to a Cuban exile group in Miami. President Clinton retaliated by signing the Helms-Burton bill into law.
It sends a strong message to the Cuban government. We will not tolerate attacks on United States citizens.
So for now, Castro and American businesses' dreams of U.S. dollars fueling Cuba's economic revival are on hold.
But you know what? Cuba will continue to resist. And Cuba will continue to be here, not go down the drain. We need to wait.
When we come back, the Americans who fought with Fidel 37 years ago return to Cuba.
Welcome back. Yes, indeed.
Sunrise over Havana. A beleaguered city braces to meet the day. Behind the wheel of an antique American car. This is one way of seeing Castro's Cuba. There are thousands of them, frozen in time, no spare parts, taped together. This is day-to-day life on the inside of the revolution. Along the Malecon, Havana's majestic boulevard, paint peels everywhere. Fishermen work out of inner tubes. Empty stores and food lines are part of life. The very basics, even getting around, is tough. Except for the few people who have these. U.S. dollars. They're as good as gold. U.S. dollars. That's what people here want.
Some people have said to me that what you have now in Cuba is a kind of economic apartheid. One part of the society that's able to deal in hard currency and in dollars.
Es decir, una parte de la sociedad tiene acceso a moneda dura y a dólares.
One part cannot do that. Is this true?
¿Es cierto esto?
Es verdad.
That is very much
Pero
true.
mucha gente tiene acceso por una
But
vía
many
o por
people
otra.
have access to the hard currency one way or another.
Some Cubans get dollars mailed from relatives in the United States, but from the eager hotel workers to the young beggars to the freelance prostitutes who hustle along the Malecon, the hunt for the Yankee dollar is full-time business, just like before the revolution. In the countryside, life today is rooted in sugarcane, just as before the revolution. Perhaps these workers are better off than their grandparents. They will be fed and clothed and cared for, but only a handful will escape the hard labor of the cane fields. Fidel Castro gets out to see the sugar workers whenever he can. These campesinos have always been the bedrock of his support. Fidel landed on their ball field and, as always, was greeted with frenzy and love.
About how much a day do these workers make?
10 pesos, 12 pesos, that's the average salary, 12 pesos a day.
That's about $15 US a month, with more paid according to productivity. In order to make money to prop up the revolution, Castro is encouraging tourism. This is the other Cuban. Rooms along Varadero Beach go for $200 a day. Canadian, European, and South American tourists come here to relax, but Cuban citizens are only allowed in these hotels to work. The funds reserved for foreigners and friends of Fidel. This is the cockpit of a Soviet-built Cuban airliner. Mike Garvey and Chuck Ryan, Castro's American friends from the Sierra Maestra, are on a kind of pilgrimage, a look at Cuba 37 years later.
We're going to be landing pretty soon. That's going to be nice. All right, we're out of here. I saw that.
After CBS reports found them, Castro invited them back to Cuba.
Indeed.
Welcome back after
maybe
a 40 years, huh?
Long time.
Welcome back.
The red carpet is laid out. The Mercedes is waiting.
A far different crowd.
Two heroes of the revolution have come home. But which Cuba would they see? They'd stroll Havana's old city.
Oye, niño, we'll play football.
Tour a Cuban cigar factory.
Monte Cristo #2. Don't touch him.
I'm not going to 25. 25.
Yeah.
Play a little pickup baseball.
Oh, go, 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 go! Bien, bien! It's nice to see you. Huh?
There'd be reunions with old friends. And then with one more.
Good evening. Let me see if I recognize you. Yes, Garvey, who was the tallest, I remember. And Shook.
Era un poquito más bajito y más
flaco.
Sí, flaco. Comandante.
It was a special moment for the Americans, recalling the high point of their lives, lives which became much more routine back in the States.
I love the man. I would die for the man today, right now, and I would have died for him in the mountains. This man has got more strength than any human being I have ever seen.
It is Castro's strength that has carried the Cuban Revolution and brought so much national pride to the Cuban people. But it's also that man's strength that has bullied and imprisoned thousands, shutting down all political dissent. Ryan and Garvey didn't see these Cubans begging for exit visas to America. Ryan and Garvey didn't see these three political prisoners sent out the back door on a U.S. Navy jet, released by Castro after a combined 12 years in one of his prisons.
Fidel Castro can deny it, rationalize it, claim the people of Cuba are behind him. He can claim that the price of progress is his unquestioned authority. But the facts are these. There is no freedom here, not as Americans define it. There is no true freedom for artists, teachers, average working people, journalists. Protest brings punishment. It is against Cuban law to even challenge Castro politically. Fidel Castro calls it a democracy of the people. But that's only when the people are going his way.
The counter-revolutionaries do not have the prerogatives that the revolutionaries have to dissent. And you know, this is a need for our country. This is a necessity for our country. To have a unity, to preserve the unity of our people. Because few people in the world have had the danger of being annexated to the United States, of becoming another star in the U.S. banner.
He is a full-time, efficient, brutal, cold-blooded dictator. Absolutely.
There are people in my country who say to me, Dan Rather, you're being fooled, that when the history of Fidel Castro is written, that it will be like Stalin was in Soviet Union.
That much? That
yes,
bad?
That's what they say.
Like Stalin in the Soviet Union?
That's what they say. Now, is there any chance that history's judgment is going to be anywhere near that?
Ni la centésima parte de eso.
Neither that nor 1/100th of that. There is no possibility.
Absoluto.
Zero possibility. Zero possibility.
Y a lo mejor un día
and perhaps one day
alguien le dice
somebody will come up to you
que lo han tratado de engañar,
and say that they have tried to fool you
comparándome a mí con Stalin.
By comparing me to Stalin.
Y no comparándome con un santo.
And not by comparing me to one saint.
Porque ninguno lo somos.
Because we are not saints. We all have our flaws.
Pero en los términos políticos,
but in political terms, as we are talking here now,
le puedo decir que
I can assure you that I am a man of integrity,
y la firmeza,
that I am a man of firmness,
que mantiene los santos.
The same as the saints are.
Do you expect to retire or to, in effect, be carried out on your shield?
I'm planning to die with my boots on, but not with my boots on in politics. He has the opportunity to do the best for our country, leave Cuba, finish with the tragedy Fidel. Enough is enough.
37 years is more than enough.
But then politics, the way I see it, is art. It's something you devote to. It's a passion. I was born a politician. And I have always wanted to do this. This is my life.
A life of contradictions. A life of a visionary, say some, of a victimizer, say others. A life of promise and power cut straight from the cloth of his personality. I'll be back with some final thoughts in a moment.
As a young revolutionary in a Cuban courtroom, Fidel Castro proclaimed, "History will absolve me." Well, history has not absolved him, at least not completely and not yet. Television, which loves simple labels, is stymied too. And at the end of this visit, it is the complexity of the man that prevails. Murderer or martyr, false prophet or man of destiny. The last chapters are now being written. What is certain is that Fidel's final place in history, like his first, will be about his relationship to the United States. America propelled Fidel Castro into the spotlight, and America has kept him there. For CBS Reports, I'm Dan Rather. Good night.